Hey everybody, this is Keylime again with your weekly preview. This week we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on, so as always, let's jump in and figure out what's going on here. So for the event this week, we have Glacial Peaks as the kingdom of choice. What's of note there from a key perspective is a few things, but first let me show you the new troops that are coming around as part of that. So within the glory rewards, we're actually getting this really nice Daughter of Ice troop. So you're getting 2 arcanes, which is always very fun. But what this person is doing is converting reds to blues and then making an ice storm. But what's especially of note about this person is that they're empowered, so they're starting with full mana. So this person is actually extremely great. Glacial Peaks, as you may or may not know, is very ice dependent, so conjuring an ice storm is very nice. Pretty much all of their primary troops use blue, so this person being in the lineup not taking blue themselves as a primary empowered converter is actually very strong. The fact that it makes an ice storm is also pretty strong. So this is one of those troops that I absolutely recommend you get at least one. Excuse me. I personally will be getting 14 of them so I can get them up to mythic. This is absolutely something that you want to get your hands on. Daughter of Ice is extremely good, something you're going to want to build into your lineups. The other thing that we got new was this other troop, Frostfeather. So Frostfeather came out today as well. And what they do is 29 damage to all enemies, but then if there's an ice storm running, you curse all enemies. So ways that you could be getting ice storms running would be something like a Jar of Eyes, something like having a Scotty in your lineup, something like even running that Daughter of Ice that we just showed. That would get an ice storm running if there wasn't one already. And then you're cursing all enemies. So of course that's dispelling all positive effects and then also lengthening the duration of effects that are already on the person. So this is also a pretty okay troop. So damage to all is always nice. I'm not going to complain about that. It's not necessarily boosted by anything. You will note that from a traits perspective, it's gaining 1 magic whenever an ally casts a spell. So this is again very indicative of like a frost mage kind of thing. It also has this weird, if it dies, it freezes everybody. So that's kind of cool. So this is a troop that I think can be played around with. The fact that it curses everybody is actually pretty nice. But I suspect there's some interesting things we can do with this troop. You'll also note that it's blue, and that Daughter of Ice that we just showed is also converting everything to blue. They're from Glacial Peaks, so that's also pretty cool. But then within the event chest this time around, what we're actually getting, so if we go Kingdom Sort by Glacial Peaks, and then sort by base rarity, if you're opening up event keys this time around, there's actually a couple cool troops you could be getting. So Scotty's in there, as I mentioned. I did not mention this, but I just did now. Scotty's in there. So as I mentioned, Ice Storm every single turn is something that she can do, so that's very nice. She's also getting that 1 magic every time a spell is cast thing. And she's somebody that's going to freeze a mana burn the first 2 people and then rotate them out to the back. And then she summons a Queen Mab. But really where her primary utility is coming from is this creating an Ice Storm every single turn. That's extremely strong. This ability is interesting because it can kind of mess up lineups. You can imagine if you're fighting a life and death team where the life and death is in the 3rd slot, Scotty could just put them right up to the top slot, which would really make that team ineffective. So that's pretty cool. You could also imagine combining that with Frostfeather that we just showed, which would dispel. So anytime there was Bless going on, you'd take that off. So that's pretty cool. If you're fishing for Scotty, she's in the event keys this time around. You'll also be able to pick up Frostfeather that I just mentioned. So Frostfeather, if you're looking to grab them, open up event keys as well. Queen Mab is also in there, which is a nice, extremely strong troop, primarily from this. So every 4 or 5 match that you're going to freeze somebody. So that's extremely strong. And it also has this ability to mana burn everybody, which isn't mana drain, it's mana burn. So you'll just hit them for the amount of mana that they have acquired already plus your magic. So it's usually a pretty decent hit. Like you'll be doing about like 30 to 40 damage to everybody depending on how much they've got. But then on top of that, if there's a bunch of blue gems on the board, which I imagine you will, then you'll get an extra turn. So you can kind of do a lot of weird looping stuff with Queen Mab and just be freezing people constantly. So if you don't have Queen Mab, now would be a good time to pick her up as well. And of course you could also get that Daughter of Ice troop that I just mentioned. So again, I could not more strongly recommend getting this Daughter of Ice troop. This is going to be a very important troop to have going forward. I can only imagine the amount of ways that this is going to be used, so when it comes to the Daughter of Ice, like, absolutely do make sure that you're picking her up. Beyond all of that, there's some interesting stuff in the soulforge this time around. So as you know, with the latest update, you can start crafting weapons in here. So the weapons that are in here, there's this silent night thing. This is kind of not good, so I wouldn't recommend this. There's frost staff in there, which is also kind of not good. This is something you could have crafted before. This was like just sitting in the old weapon list that you could just craft all the time. So nothing particularly special about this. Glacial Crystal is a little more interesting, and I'm on the fence if I want to make it or not myself. So this is one of those make a bunch of mana things based on having allies in the same kingdom. So Glacial Peak is the kingdom. So if you have 3 or more, well, if you have any Glacial Peak people, you're going to be creating this mix of blue and purple gems. So normally I find with these weapons, if you're not running at least 3 of this special troop type for this mana mixing property, you're not really going to get a ton of benefit out of it. The nice thing is Glacial Peaks has some troops that you would potentially run together, so it's not uncommon to see like Queen Mab and Scotty in the same lineup. If you're running a Frost Mage class, Frost Mage is also Glacial Peak, so you will count as part of those. So if you're just running Frost Mage class with that new Daughter of Ice troop, which is also Glacial Peak. Frost Feather is also Glacial Peak. Again, Scotty as I mentioned, Mab as I mentioned. It's very possible you'll actually have 3 or more Glacial Peak people on the same team. If you do, this weapon is going to have a lot of value for you. So, not to be discounted. I think it's worth crafting. As I'm talking out loud, I'm probably going to craft it. I just don't want to not have it in the instance where that team starts to become a very meta thing. It's an interesting color combination. It's yellow and green. So before we were looking at Daughter of Ice, which was brown and purple, and now this is yellow and green. So the kind of cool thing about this is if you have Daughter of Ice on your team and you have this weapon on your team, you're leaving blue open for pretty much everybody else on your lineup. And Daughter of Ice is making blue, and this weapon is making blue. So it's actually going to be really, really, really strong from a mana generation perspective. So something to look into. If you think you might be playing around with the Frost Mage class, with Queen Mab, with Scotty, with Daughter of Ice, with Frost Feather, maybe look into this weapon. Again, it's 300 diamonds, which isn't stupid expensive. It's not overly cheap either. But if you don't mind delaying your mythic a little bit here, then it's worth crafting, I think. You might regret not having this, so it's worth jumping in and grabbing just in case. The other thing of note that we're getting is Guild Wars. So Guild Wars is this week. So again, you want to jump in here and set your defenses. I haven't actually adjusted my teams. I'm definitely going to be making some updates to these. But you want to jump in here, set all your defenses. Again, it doesn't matter what color these days are as far as your defenses goes. So you don't need to put all 4 yellow troops on yellow day. Don't worry about that. Just put any teams that you want. Just make sure that every single troop in here is completely unique. As long as your weapon is different, that counts as unique. So you can run the same class as long as the weapons are different. You're good to go. So set these all up with unique troops. You'll get 12,000 points just for that. And then on attack days, you'll be able to just go through, make sure you're color matched for that day. So the first day you're going to want to be all purple troops, next day all blue troops, etc. So good luck with your Guild Wars funness. That's definitely going to be interesting. Then some other stuff that we're getting is this Champion of the Guard. So he's kind of weird. He's got this big old, I don't know, I'm getting like a Warcraft vibe from this guy. But what he is basically a new Bloodhammer / Stonehammer. I always forget which one he is. He's going to be the tankiest troop in the game. So his spell, when he casts it, he's going to gain a lot of armor. So his base magic is 9. With your bonuses, it's probably going to be closer to like 20 or so. So then it's magic times 2 plus 8. So he's going to probably gain close to 50 armor or so, maybe more, just when you cast him. And then if there's 13 or more skulls on the board, you get double that. So that's kind of really weird. That implies you want to put him in like skull generation lineups. It's hard to kind of get that many skulls on the board. So this is kind of awkward, but in general, then he's creating a mix of 22 blue and red. So he himself is red, so the blue is really going to be what you would want to benefit. So if you are going to try and build around this guy when he does come out, you're going to have to put blue-oriented type troops below him. All the mana that he's making that's red is more than likely just going to feed right back into him. It's going to be hard to get some spill over there, but the blue will all spill over to the people below you. Admittedly, like when it came to Stonehammer before, I didn't rate him very high personally, just because it was hard to put a mythic in the first slot and build a functional lineup underneath them without mana blocking everyone to death. And again, the troop isn't doing anything. He's just a tank, so all he's doing when he casts is creating mana. Hopefully that helps the people below them, and then just getting beefier up top. So like the odds of him dying up top is pretty low. The nice thing is that to keep him strong and he's casting his ability, at least you're getting some potential mana out of this. So that's kind of cool. But you would have to be doing all your fun stuff underneath him. So we'll see where we can slot this guy. He has like really high spell reduction, so 50%. He has very decent skull reduction at 60%. So as you can tell, he's just going to be really, really hard to whittle down. He's not impervious or anything like that, so you can just devour him. You could just like insta-kill him. There's a lot of ways you could get rid of him. But, I mean, he is going to be extremely tanky. And then beyond all of that, he's got this fun Blessing of the Guard, so all red allies get +1 stats at the start of each turn. So that's okay. You know, I don't really prefer those kinds of things, but he is a lot more interesting than Stonehammer, I'll say at least that much. When he comes out, I'm definitely going to get him, or try my ass off to get him. See if I can build some lineups around him. I'm obsessed with red mana, I'm obsessed with Sun Spear, so him being in a lineup could potentially be cool. But we'll see. I don't know. He's a cool card, if nothing else, but to be determined if we can actually do anything interesting with him. The last thing I'll mention on the PC side is that we might be getting the Stonesong Irie at the end of this week. So it's possible that everything that I mentioned last week about the Stonesong Irie Delve could be coming out this week. So stay tuned for that. It's entirely possible that won't happen. It's entirely possible that will happen. According to Terran's World, it will, but I'm not entirely sure. When they announced the delay, it sounded like it was going to be multiple weeks instead of just one. So no promises, but if the Stonesong Irie does come out, feel free to watch last week's video. I'll link in the comments or in the description. I cover everything that's coming in that delve if that does come out later today, or later this week, I should say. Alright, recording first thing in the morning. So that covers everything that's happening on the PC side. On the Switch side, what we've got going on, so for the event this week, we've got the raid boss, so you guys are going to be smashing some bosses in there. You're getting a little help with some new troops. So the first troop that we've got to look at is Mr. Halfgrim. I should probably type more than just that. So what he does is he's doing damage directly, but then it's also getting boosted by his life. It's a 3-to-1, so that's actually pretty decent. Mine looks like he has 66. Yours will probably have less than this, but 3-to-1 of this, at least for me, would be about 20 extra damage. So you can imagine that's actually a really nice chunk of damage. Even if you don't have this ascended up to Mythic, it's going to be doing a lot more damage than a normal like boss killing type troop is going to do. So from a pure damage perspective, he's actually very, very nice for this event. That's all he's doing, but he is a very effective boss killer. So as far as boss killers go, he's actually one of the better ones. So when you're running this event, do make sure you run him in it. He's going to be able to one-shot the boss at least for a good amount, especially if you get him upgraded to Mythic. He's just going to put in a ton of damage. So that's very, very cool. And of course, from a trait perspective, he has the God Slayer, so he'll do 3 to 5 times skull damage. So it's possible to throw him in the first slot of your lineup, potentially, if you want to do that, and just be doing super skull damage to the bosses. So potentially cool. I find that less effective when they're tower killers. That's more fun because there will be towers in every slot, so you can start doing skull damage right away. Putting him in the top slot and trying to get to the boss with a skull is very unlikely, so it's not super great, admittedly. He doesn't have any kind of natural tankiness, so you'd have to be protecting him some other way for the entire way down to Zuul, so I wouldn't really recommend putting him in your first slot. But again, from a damage perspective, extremely strong, so you'll have a lot of fun killing Zuul with this guy, so that's always nice. And then in the glory reward section, you guys get Arctic Fox. So Arctic Fox is kind of interesting. He's creating 5 blue gems boosted by frozen enemies. So it's a ×2, which means that if you have the entire enemy team frozen, you'll be getting 4 × 2, so you'll be getting 8 extra blue. So he can potentially make 13 blue, which would be gross. That again assumes that everybody's frozen. He does freeze when somebody else gets hit by a skull by him, so that's weird. I would never put him in the top slot. So base mana generation is pretty bad. Just 5 blue gems is actually very bad. You would need to have a bunch of people frozen to get a lot of benefit out of this. I don't think he's particularly great. He's someone that you can kind of slot in your lineup if you don't have other mana generators. If you're running him with someone like a Queen Mab or a Scotty, if you happen to pick them up or anything like that, that could be more interesting. But in general, I don't think this is necessarily the greatest troop on the planet. But if you are like short on blue mana generators, this could potentially be useful. But what you guys are getting out of event keys this time around is actually very cool. So you guys are getting Stormheim. So within Stormheim, if we sort by base rarity, you guys get access to these guys, which are really cool. So Jotner is somebody that every 4 or 5 match you do, it's going to barrier a random ally, so that's very nice. From a passive barrier generation, that's really, really strong. But what he's also doing is true damage to an enemy, like a really decent amount, but the boost is what makes him kind of nuts. So if you put him on an all-giant team, you'll see that it's boosted by barriered and giant allies. If you put him on an all-giant team, then the boost that you're getting from this is like stupid high. You can just like one-shot people with him, and then you're also barriering a lot of people. So in the early game, if you're just starting out, or you don't have a ton of other mythics, you don't have all your kingdoms like up to level like 5 or 10 or something like that, star level that is, he's going to actually be one of like the better troops that you'll be able to pick up in the early game, just because that damage is so strong, those barriers are so strong. There's also a lot of really cool giants that you can pick up, so the boost ratio is really what makes that true damage go from like, you know, being pretty okay to being like stupid. So again, if you have everyone on your team barriered, that's like what, 4 times, so 28. And if you're running 4 other giants, that's another 28. So you're doing 56 extra true damage. That's gross. So Jotner is someone you can pick up from event keys. He's very cool. Hyndla, who's probably the most important giant you can get for this reason. So her last trait is magic pumping all giants by 2 life and 2 magic every 4 or 5 match. So every 4 or 5 match, everybody on your side that's a giant is getting picked up. So if you're running a Titan class, you'd be getting that. If you're running a Warlord class, you're also getting that since they're also giant. So that's actually very, very nice. Then her ability is also pretty cool. She's hitting 3 people, the first person getting 36, and then the other 2 people, well, for me at least 36, the other 2 people getting half of that. But then everybody that she just hit, all 3 of those people get frozen, so that's pretty nice. And then she's summoning a random giant on top of that, so she's someone who you can put in your lineup and just keep pumping out giants to try and keep the fight going if you're in a bad spot. So the massive pumping you can do with this is honestly the best part about Hyndla, but from a giant team perspective, she's kind of a staple. She's really, really good. She can make your lineup accelerate a lot faster in terms of stat pumping. And then you also get access to Jarl, so he's extremely nice. So he's creating 9 red, 9 yellow, and then he does damage to 1 person. His traits don't really do anything especially cool. I don't recommend running him in the first slot, admittedly, but if you do, he gets extra stats. This burning a random person is okay. I mean, honestly, there's not a ton of value in this. So from a trait perspective, it's not there. But what he does is he creates a bunch of gems. You'll see that he takes red himself, and he's creating red on top of this. So you've potentially run into this, or you'll do this if you get him. You can sometimes just cast Jarl over and over and over and over and over again. Like, the board will just be so red, so yellow, that every single time you cast Jarl, he's going to loop. So you can get into these really fun scenarios where you're just like constantly Jarl looping. So if you're opening up event keys this time around, all 3 of these are actually very nice. As far as like other people you could potentially pick up, so there's not anyone particularly crazy. Valkyrie is someone who's always useful. So if you don't have Valkyrie, what she's actually doing is transforming a selected color to blue. You're also getting some souls from this. So Valkyrie is someone that if you don't have is also useful. So opening up event keys to potentially get her is always nice. You get bonus blue mana. Valkyrie's used in a lot of random teams, especially early on. So if you don't have Valkyrie either, opening up event keys would be worth it. But yeah, you get some really high value giants out of this if you open up event keys, so that's always fun. As far as the actual soulforge for you guys, so treat this as my promise. I'm going to actually do the soulforge on my Switch. I have to actually get there, so I have to unlock the kingdoms. I haven't done that just yet, so I promise for next week's video I'll do that so I can talk to you guys about what's coming in the soulforge for you. But yeah, that covers everything that's going to be in the Switch. The last thing that I'll mention is the 4.4 preview. So tonight, InfinityPlusTwo is doing a stream, so they're going to be covering some other stuff, but it's possible they're going to talk about the 4.4 patch. So do keep your eyes open for their stream tonight. I'll link to it in the description. But if you're curious about what's coming in the 4.4 patch, I'll actually also link to a forum post that was made. What they did is they took everything that was talked about in the last stream, which showed a lot of screenshots of what's going on. So this post will actually detail everything that's coming, talking through like what the different features are, what the changes are. There's some interesting stuff, but of course when that patch is close to coming out or coming out, I'll make sure to do a video talking through all of the changes for you guys. But yeah, that's something else that if you're curious about, you can tune into the Twitch stream later tonight, and again, the link will be in the description. But that's everything I've got for you guys today, so I hope you guys have an awesome week. On PC side, good luck in your Guild Wars. On the Switch side, have fun smashing the crap out of Zuul. But yeah, that's everything. So this is Keylime signing off. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.